Again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Show with Deborah Prinzing. This is episode 598. A few weeks ago, Slow Flowers and our publishing partner, BLOOM Imprint, released the 2023 Slow Flowers Floral Insights and Industry Forecast. We called our first insight Non-Floral Florals, acknowledging the broadening plant palette for cut flower growers and florists who are adopting all types of botanical ingredients, from mushrooms and vegetables to foraged materials to non-traditional plants such as native species. We highlighted today's guest in that insight, and I'm thrilled that you can meet her today and learn more. Based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Slow Flowers member Alex Cacciari of Seeley Farm has introduced her floral customers at the Michigan Flower Growers Cooperative to native perennials suitable for cut flowers. Through a farmer rancher grant from North Central Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, the project trialed more than 20 species of native herbaceous flowers and foliage plants to determine their value and marketability in the wholesale floral industry. According to Alex, these plants, which include such beauties as gentian, black-eyed Susan, blue flag iris, Joe pieweed, and swamp milkweed, well, they support wildlife and pollinators, and they're more drought and flood tolerant than their non-native counterparts. She explains, as cut flower crops, when planted in their desired conditions, native plants require less added water, fertility, and pesticides than traditional crops, and that offers a sustainable option for growers. I'm really excited about this conversation. Let's jump right in and learn more. And you can see photos that Alex shared in our show notes for episode 598 when we post the audio of this interview Wednesday, February 22nd at slowflowerspodcast.com. I'll share our sponsor thank yous after the conversation. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here in the virtual studio with Alex Cacciari of Seeley Farm. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Deborah.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank for having me. Happy to talk to you.
You bet. You bet. And Alex is from the Ann Arbor, Michigan area, and she and her husband, Mark Nowak, have Seeley Farm, which doesn't have the word flowers in it. So first of all, tell us why that is.
Yeah, well, we started just growing vegetables. That was how we began, actually mostly salad greens. That was our first real crop, and added flowers in our second year and have been doing it ever since. That was 12 years ago.
Wow. I love the about story on your website. I've been reading them a lot lately because I'm teaching this creative writing course for florists and flower farmers, and everybody is a little freaked out about writing their about story, but yours is so wonderful because you talk about what's behind the name of your farm and how you and Mark came to farming. So just give us a little shorthand version of that. I would love people to know more about you.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, because when I look at our website analytics, our about page is always the highest hits of all the pages on our site, which really surprises me, but it just goes to show that that's what people are looking for, that information.
Yeah. They want to know the farmer. Yeah. I love that. So you wrote it?
Yeah, I did a long time ago. I probably should update it now, but yeah, we started our farm 12 years ago in 2011, and before that had worked on various other farms in the East Coast, the West Coast, and internationally through the WWOOFing program, which is a great program for travel and farming, and we just kind of dove in. We had both done other lines of work before farming. I had a short career in journalism in my 20s in New York City, and really just found a love for, being outdoors and doing this work.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you met on a farm or some kind of homestead that was called Seeley. Is that how you kept the name?
So we met before that, but that was a formative experience for us in the Hudson Valley, working on the original Seeley family homestead, and never looked back.
Mm-hmm. So why Michigan? Was that a family connection, or it's probably a little harder to farm in Michigan than Hudson Valley, but I'm not quite sure about the zones.
Yeah, my husband is from Ann Arbor, so we moved here shortly before we started our business, and we're Zone 6A, so we're in Southeast Michigan, which is probably one of the more temperate parts of the state. I mean, today it's 56 degrees, which is insane. So we're having
You are literally 10 degrees colder than Seattle today. We had snow
really
last night. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I saw on your website that you pretty much open for business in April. So you're working now, probably getting a lot of stuff seeded and, both edibles and flowers at this point, right?
Yeah, our heated propagation house is going. We do considerable retail sales of nursery stock between April and June. So I grow a lot of perennials and annuals, herbs and veggies for home gardeners that we sell in our greenhouse here and at the farmers market. So we're knee deep in potting mix and seeds and cuttings and all of that.
You're cranking it. Well, thanks for squeezing me in. I'm delighted that we could talk. I will just let everyone know that Alex is a past guest of the podcast. She and Amanda Maurerman were on, I want to say 3 years ago or so, to talk about the Michigan Flower Growers Cooperative. And that I will share a link to that interview in our show notes, because that kind of gives a little bit of the origin story of you were one of the founding members of that, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this sort of factors into what we're going to talk about today, and that I heard about what you were doing through Sue McCleary. She mentioned it on some call I was on. I think it was a call about invasive species that Becky Feasby had put together. And Sue, everyone may know, she's a phenomenal floral designer and floral artist, but she's very experimental, and she loves her farmers at the Michigan Flower Growers Cooperative. So she mentioned that you were doing this project, Alex, involving native plants and as cut flowers. And I was so fascinated by it. And so I rang you up and asked you to tell me about it. And it's worth a whole episode. So I don't know, where should we start? How did this idea come to you? You've probably been growing plants that are considered native to your region as cuts, like informally, right?
Yeah. So once we purchased our farm property, we really felt like we could invest in perennials. We'd been growing mostly annuals until then, and started planting the staples, peonies and roses, and the things that people know of as cut flowers. But we've always wanted to branch out from there. We have been heavily investing in perennials for about 5 or 6 years now. And I'm always trying something new. And we started planting a lot of native species because we have a very challenging soil here. It's like a heavy, wet clay. Sometimes it can be flooded in areas. So I was really looking for those problem-solving plants. And I mean, natives are, just the definition of problem solvers. So there's a few tried and true natives that I loved, but I really wanted the opportunity to explore more and see what's out there. So in 2019, I applied for a grant through the North Central Region SARE, which is an acronym for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Entity. And it's a grant program I've always had my eyes on. It's just $9,000 or $10,000 for a farmer to research something for 2 years and sort of try it out in the marketplace. And it came to me that this would be a good opportunity to really, buy in some plant material and really trial some of these plants, and also share them with the flower community and get that, important feedback from the florists of, does this work for you? Does it hold up in water? Does it not shed pollen? All the things that matter, because obviously, if there's no appreciation for these plants in the marketplace, we're just spinning our wheels growing them. We can enjoy them for their natural beauty, but I was really looking at, can they be used in floral design and then put into sort of, production agriculture and grown, in a commercial way. So that was sort of the idea there.
Well, you got the grant, and when you say it was a 2-year grant, did you start? Have you worked on this from like 2020 to 2021, or did it go 2021 to 2022? I know you're kind of wrapping it up right now.
Yeah. So I just submitted the final report. So it was mostly a 2020 and 2021 project.
Okay.
So Year
Wow.
one, 2020 was a lot of, sourcing plug. I mostly purchase in plugs and some bare root plant material. We have a couple great native plant nurseries right here in Michigan that I could drive and pick up from. I also use North Creek Nurseries in Pennsylvania as a great source. And year one was really getting things established, getting those
Mhm.
plugs in the ground, watered in, and then year two, which was last year, was the fun part, really seeing everything in bloom, cutting those bunches and trying them out in the market. And I distributed, I think it was 138 bunches of free flowers to florists through the Michigan Flower Co-op. And just asking, hey, would you fill out this survey, about all the qualities of this plant? What do you think are the best uses for it? Or maybe it doesn't work for you at all.
Wow, that's amazing. And how many florists do you think took those? I mean, 137, like that's some people took more than one bunch probably to play with.
Yeah, it's the harvest varied depending on the
Mhm.
crop. Some people took a bunch of every variety I brought that year. Some people, it was just kind of hit or miss who was at the market that
Got it.
day.
Yeah,
But I just said, please give me feedback on this. And some people sent me photos of the designs that they made with the flowers. So it
that's
was
so cool.
invaluable getting that.
And it's so smart to focus on that subset of florists because they're already interested in Michigan grown flowers. And so this is just even taking that evolution further to say these are native Michigan grown flowers. And I guess that we should probably define native because I'm sure it has a lot of definitions. It's sort of like sustainable. It's kind of an elastic word. How do you interpret it or explain it to people for your region?
Yeah. So I looked up the USDA definition because I wanted something to stand on there, and I have shared that on my website. I don't have it memorized,
Oh,
but
that's okay. We'll pull it
um,
up and share it with people. Yeah.
yeah. But really, when I was looking up these plants, I was looking at what is their range, and some native plants have a massive range. I mean, many of the plants in my trial can occur naturally anywhere east of the Mississippi from Maine to the mid-Atlantic,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
sometimes further south than that. So they might not be ones that are found like prevalently in the wild here in our region, but they are within the native range.
Yeah. And I think the biggest complaint that I've heard, and even coming out of the gardening industry, is it's hard to get native plants into production cultivation, like in some, depending on the variety, sometimes they're happy in their place and they don't want to be, messed around with or propagated. Did you have that issue or,
With
was-
some of the species, so I trialed a lot of milkweeds because they're so gorgeous and just invaluable for the pollinator population, and those are a taprooted plant, and so they just really resent transplanting. So I tried to get young plugs, get them in early and established. So
Mhm,
there
mhm.
were some challenges with that, and sometimes sourcing plant material can be tough too. Although there are more and more native nurseries now. So
Yeah, yeah. And the native, I mean, I was trying to think of your region. It's not it what do you is it like upper plains or what would Michigan fall under in terms of
yeah,
a geological region?
we're often called Upper Midwest.
Okay.
So grouped with, but it's such a big state. So like we probably span three distinct horticultural zones.
Mhm.
From 3 to 6 if you go up to the UP. So we're probably maybe more grouped with the lower Midwest, being here in Southeast Michigan. We're close to Ohio
Yeah.
and that kind of climate.
Yeah. Well, I was really impressed with the list of varieties that you had, and you do have them posted on your website and under the Native Cut Flower Project, which we'll share. But you do have a definition of what is a native plant, so I appreciate that. And then this trial plant list, there's like 25 or 30 varieties on here. And I will share this with our viewers and listeners. But yes, I see you've got milkweed, butterfly weed. We're using the common names here: Joe Pye weed, and gentian, blue flag iris, lupin, and then some that really I've heard of, but I'm not familiar with, like wind quinine. Um, that's just I can't wait to see photos of these things because there's some of these sound just really lovely. And some we know about, like goldenrod, obviously solidago. So talk a little bit about what what you learned and like who are some of your favorites on this list?
Yeah, well, so I started out with a few favorites that I've grown for years. Like blunt-tooth mountain mint is a fantastic native plant. It's a foliage. It has an intense minty aroma, and the designers, I've been selling it for several years now, and the designers just eat it up. It has kind of a blue-green, soft, heart-shaped leaf, and the
Neat.
pollinators love it. So that's a great one, and it has a long harvest window, unlike some of these plants. Northern sea oats is another great, very decorative seed head grass
Yeah.
that looks like an oat, like a flattened oat.
Yes, I love that. Is that chesmanthium? I remember looking that up because it's available here in the Seattle market too. Some of the local growers are producing it. Um, did you of this list that you have posted, are these all the winners? Like, did you have some that you had to kind of decline trying to get into the marketplace?
Yeah, so I'm right now putting together sort of my final, the winners, so to speak, of the trial. So it's less than this list. The list is everything that I tried, and a
Okay.
number of plants did not survive or even perform for me. Some of them survived, but I didn't have any material I could even harvest. It was too short or not flowering properly. So.
That's great. And the grant is allowing you to do sort of an educational component that you're going to share through the Michigan Flower Growers Cooperative, or how are you going to share that?
Yeah, so probably by the time this airs, we're going to have our the biggest part of the marketing component of this was I developed an availability calendar that's meant to be a useful tool for both growers and florists. I worked with a graphic designer, and we just included all of these native plants, and then I'll say, it was also my pet project to include a lot of other common perennials in there, because as a grower, growing perennials for cut flowers, one of the frustrations I've had over the years is some of these really special perennials like geum or arinjum or columbine or gypsophilia, things that grow really well in our climate and are so resilient. Sometimes their harvest window is 10 days or 14 days. And
Wow.
so for a designer or florist to be able to rely on and plan for and be aware of that window, I really wanted a tool where they could sort of look at a calendar and have a general harvest window for each perennial. And the idea behind that is it just encourages, the purchase and use of perennial cut flowers in their natural, blooming season, and empower florists to sort of, buy even more locally. So.
Well, I'm wondering if there's people asking, why does this matter? I mean, I feel like after speaking with you when we did the pre-interview, there's like a really strong reason to grow natives from the farmer's point of view. I'd love to have you talk about that. But I think from a florist point of view, florists who care about sustainable practices should also say this is part of their value system, is to try to support what their farmers are growing and use them in creative ways. So your reason, you've mentioned the pollinators and a couple times, you've mentioned your crappy soil, so you're probably doing a lot of regenerative work on your farm. How is the native crop kind of improving that?
Yeah, well, they're just more resilient plants overall. We grow a lot of, seed-grown annuals, Lysianthus, and, dahlias and all the divas like that. But as a grower, I just have such a deep love for perennials, and specifically native perennials, because they're so resilient and reliable. They don't need as much water. They don't need, sometimes they can be finicky about soil conditions and all that, but they're really, a carefree plant. And it's sort of a rewilding of the landscape too. So kind of, putting plants that are endemic to a region obviously encourage all the fauna of that region, the pollinators, mammals, other wildlife species that rely on those. So I think Doug Talmy has been one of the more outspoken people about, just the importance of bringing these species, back to our landscapes and getting rid of the cultivated,
Yeah.
alien species. And I think you're right that, florists who have a sustainability, perspective in what they're doing, I just hope that they understand, just the value for these crops, to a landscape and to a grower.
Well, when we spoke earlier, something you said really struck me. First of all, how much acreage do you guys farm on?
We have 12 tillable acres.
Okay. Is this a big section that you've devoted to the perennial natives, or is it sort of integrated throughout?
So the trial plot is in one section. It's probably all combined maybe a half of an acre, and it's integrated. So we had another project funded by the USDA, which was an alley cropping project. So there are woody species interplanted with these herbaceous
Oh my
perennials.
gosh, what a brilliant
Yeah.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the one shortfall of the grant is that I could only trial herbaceous species just because it's only 2 years, and that, it wasn't a long enough turnaround to be able to trial woodies, but there's so many native woody plants that could be and should be on this list.
So the USDA grant helped fund the trial of woodies, and then you interspersed the native perennials grow between the woody rows.
Yeah. So
Oh, brilliant.
the USDA grant was for alley cropping, which is this concept of growing sort of like longer crops. It's often used in the South. People plant pecan trees with hay, patches in between. But in our situation, we planted woody native species for cutting, interspersed with the herbaceous species. And the idea being that the herbaceous perennials will come into production much sooner than the woodies, and they'll sort of collectively create a really diverse habitat.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh, that sounds fabulous. It also sounds so much like what the old definition of permaculture is, because those plants just keep producing for you, and so your labor, one would hope, becomes lower every year. You put your labor into your annual crops, but then there's these perennials just given the gift of beauty and not requiring too much, hopefully too much of your help. I could be wrong.
No, you're right. Yeah, they're much more carefree.
You said something really interesting though about how you're going to, I'm paraphrasing here, but like harvest say 2/3 of the crop and leave a third for the pollinators, or something that was really sort of, it's not like paying it forward for your own farm health. Is that a generalization, or like how are you keeping some for the pollinators, and then the rest for the marketplace?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right how you said it. And it's an important part of how I want to share with growers about this trial. These crops cannot be treated like a, clear cut harvest every single stem kind of crop, because then, we're not reaping the benefit of having planted the natives in the first place. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it is the flower or the seed head of the plant that is providing a food source. And so if you cut that down, it sort of defeats the whole purpose. So I obviously don't want people row cropping natives and clear cutting them for sale. This is more about integrating them into the landscape, and they don't even need to be planted in a traditional, production setting. These could be in your hedgerows, or, put into a border maybe around the farmhouse, or, something that you cut a little, leave a little.
Yeah. So are you doing that? Like the 2/3, 1/3, that applies to a plant, not the entire row, right?
Yeah, so I'm leaving some on each plant just so that the stand itself is, productive and available. And, I know a lot of pollinators, are attracted to like scent or color or form, and just making sure there's a little bit of that over the whole section.
Oh my gosh. Well, are you, I don't think you're certified organic at Seeley Farm, are you?
We were up until 2 years ago.
Really? Wow. So your practices haven't changed. You're just not filling out the paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
So the pollinator life must just be teeming. I mean, the butterflies alone coming for that milkweed must just be amazing to watch. I mean, what have you kind of can to share anecdotally that you've seen happen because of this project?
Yeah, you're right. I've observed a lot of activity in the trial plot and all over our farm. We have a lot of wild spaces that we encourage. We collected a ton of monarch caterpillars this fall for our son's school class. They hatched them in the classroom and sort of, and got to set them free. And I remember the teacher saying, like, where in the world did you find so many monarchs? I said, well, I just planted, 300 young milkweed plants. So
we're a magnet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was wondering what you thought about whether a project like this could be replicated in other regions. Like, what advice would you give a flower farmer or grower who is intrigued and maybe has to start from scratch, and like, how do they research what would be a candidate for their farm or their marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great information online. I also think, finding a native plant nursery in your state or in your region is invaluable. So when I made this list of trial plants, those were some of the first people I called, and looking at their plant lists and what they made available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm thinking about in my state, the Washington Native Plant Society has this massive sale every fall and every spring. And at that sale, you can get things that the retail nurseries don't have because, they might have a very small native plants selection. So I think you're right. Even joining the Native Plant Society and just starting to see if they want you to trial things, that are more viable for their flowers. I mean, really, it's the foliage and flowers ornamentally that the florists are interested in. So it's kind of like you're trying to find the diamonds in the rough that really can check all those boxes for the florist.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen in terms of some? I know you're sharing some photos, but like, how are designers using some of these special new natives? Some you said are standards, like the mountain mint. You had that, but what are some of the fun surprises you had?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone loves the lupin. Lupin is such a special plant. It's that true bluish purple color, and so, they get really excited when that comes out. And it's such a playful, wiry stem. The blue flag iris was a surprising, hit. It's a tiny little, almost looks like Iris sibirica, little blue with some yellow splotches on each petal. So yeah, people had a lot of fun and, definitely responded. Some things were a little bit of a tougher sell, like Rudbeckia and Solidago. I think those are known. They're kind of considered weedy or common. It's something you sort of see everywhere by the side of the road. So those were, a little less exciting.
Yeah. But imagine somebody doing a modern installation of en masse, like then it would have a completely different, like, artful vibe. And yeah, it's just a matter of time before we see what the designers do with all these things.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, how are you going to move on from here? Are you going to keep, and because now your grant is over and you're going to start educating people, do you have other native plants you want to trial, like the woodies? Because it sounds like that's part 2 of this.
Yeah, so we have some woodies planted in the alley cropping section that I hope to gather data on. I mean, as I've been doing this grant and people have gotten word of it, everyone is sending me their favorite native plants that they like for cutting that were not on my trial. So I feel like the list could be doubled for the next 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah. If only you have the time, because of your mix of edibles and flowers, are you 50-50 or how do you?
It's about 50-50. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And is it just the 2 of you, or do you have employees on the farm?
We have some part-time seasonal help, but it's mostly just the 2 of us.
Wow. Yeah. And do you do design yourself, Alex?
I dabble a little, but I've really steered more towards, selling wholesale to florists and farmers market bunches.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the growing is what I think gets your heart to sing. Like, you love that part.
Yeah,
I love it
at heart. And another thing I really hope for the future with this too is giving native nurseries another sort of selling point for their plants. I would love to see native nurseries curate like a list of plants that work for cut flowers and arranging, because what a great way to bring those plants to a new demographic.
Right, especially the home gardener. So your infographic and your posters and all that'll be available to the native plant nurseries that you've worked with and their customers.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's such a great public service you've done, and it's obviously enhanced your business as well, but you're sharing it so widely. Other growers will probably start adding some of these varieties to their mix as well.
That's the hope, yeah. And I'm seeing so many more growers and florists talking about natives. And so like you said, I think it's a rising trend, and I can only hope it, keeps going.
And I think this whole idea too that if the florist is equipped with the knowledge to share with their customers, is a way to get customers excited. I could see a wedding done with all native, Michigan plants at some really special venue where there was this, real conscious decision to just source locally or whatever. I mean, there are those magical couples every now and then who really want to do that. And what a great fit for, I don't know, a Michigan grown farm to table meal. And then, wow, you have Michigan native flowers on the table. Oh, that's exciting. Do you open your farm up to, you said you do retail sales on your farm, right?
Yeah. So, we have a little greenhouse. We sell plants in the spring, and we sell a lot of native plants for home gardeners to put, in their gardens. We also sell cut flower bunches too.
Oh, you do? Okay, great. So that starts in April.
Yes.
And how many days a week do you open it up?
It's open 7 days a week. It's sort of an old school self-serve, pull up by the side of the road farm stand.
And then on the honor system, or do you have to staff it?
Yeah, it's on the honor system. I mean, we're always around. So if people have questions or something, those have been some of the best conversations is, someone grabs you down at the farm stand, and then you end up talking about, what's best for their garden, and they have shade and they're looking for this. So.
Oh, that's so great. Oh, I wish I could visit. My sister-in-law lives in Detroit in an apartment. So if I come to visit her, I'll get her to bring me out on a road trip to get her a bouquet, because that
would be great.
It's on my wish list. Alex, this has been so great. And when we post this at slowflowerspodcast.com, we will share photos that Alex has shared with me, but also links to that her website and some of these lists. And then people can, because pretty soon you'll be doing the big rollout promotion with the Michigan Flower Growers Cooperative, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Anything else I didn't ask you that you want to make sure we talk about?
No, I think that's it. Thanks for your attention to this. I appreciate it.
I find it really inspiring, and I hope it inspires folks in other regions to kind of look more closely at the native options that they're probably just there to be developed into, a cut flower diva, as you said.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Deborah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was so much fun. Thanks so much for joining me today. You'll find the replay video and other resources discussed today. We'll have them in the show notes for episode 598 at slowflowerspodcast.com. I hope you are as inspired to explore native perennials in your region as I am. Let's thank our sponsors whose financial support brings the Slow Flowers Show to you. This show is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free online directory to more than 850 florists, shops, and studios who design with local, seasonal, and sustainable flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. And thank you to our lead sponsor, Farm Grow Flowers. Farm Grow Flowers delivers iconic burlap wrap bouquets and lush, abundant arrangements to customers across the U.S., supporting U.S. flower farms by purchasing more than $10 million of U.S.-grown, fresh and seasonal flowers and foliage annually. Discover more at farmgrowflowers.com. And thank you to the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, a farmer-owned cooperative committed to providing the very best the Pacific Northwest has to offer in cut flowers, foliage, and plants. The Growers Market's mission is to foster a vibrant marketplace that sustains local flower farms and provides top-quality products and services to the local floral industry. Visit them at seattlewholesalegrowersmarket.com. Thank you to Longfield Gardens, which provides home gardeners with high-quality flower bulbs and perennials. Their online store offers plants for every region and every season, from tulips and daffodils to dahlias, caladiums, and amaryllis. Check out the full catalog at longfield-gardens.com. And thank you to Rooted Farmers. Rooted Farmers works exclusively with local growers to put the highest quality specialty cut flowers in floral customers' hands. When you partner with Rooted Farmers, you are investing in your community, and you can expect a commitment to excellence in return. Learn more at rootedfarmers.com. The Slow Flowers Show is a member-supported endeavor, and I value our loyal members and supporters. If you're new to our weekly show or our long-running podcast, check out all of our resources at slowflowerssociety.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of The Slow Flowers Show and the Slow Flowers podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more slow flowers on the table, one stem, one vase at a time. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of my guests alone, independent of any podcast sponsor or other person, company, or organization. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll see you next